Right now, you might feel the lingering tension of a day spent trying to appear composed, while your interior felt fragmented. Perhaps you have been moving through your hours like a person walking on a high wire, checking your balance, smoothing your posture, and monitoring your tone, all while carrying a secret, heavy weight of exhaustion. This performance of stability, this quiet, relentless effort to curate a version of yourself that seems unruffled to the outside world, has left you brittle. You are not tired because you are weak. You are tired because the act of holding yourself together, of ensuring the colors of your life do not bleed or fade in the eyes of others, requires a constant, silent labor that never truly clocks out. You are lying in your space now, perhaps with the lights dimmed so low that the corners of the room have dissolved into soft, deep shadow. The air around you is still, carrying the scent of a long day finally coming to an end. Maybe you can feel the texture of your sheets against your skin, or the gentle rhythmic weight of your own breathing as it begins to slow, shedding the frantic pace of the afternoon. This is a sanctuary. In this stillness, there is no audience. There is no expectation to be anything other than exactly who you are in this moment, even if who you are is frayed, tired, or unsure. You are not broken because you feel this fatigue. The desire to maintain a stable, beautiful image of yourself is not a flaw. It is a human impulse, born from a wish to be held, understood, and safe. Yet you have learned that the harder you polish the surface of your life, the thinner the material becomes, until it feels as though the slightest pressure might cause the whole structure to fracture. What you are feeling is not failure. It is the natural consequence of trying to be both the painter and the painting, constantly retouching the image to ensure it remains perfect, all while the light of your own life is shifting, changing, and moving. Tonight, we will not force your mind to become silent. We will not battle the thoughts that ask you to analyze your presentation or worry about tomorrow's performance. We will not try to fix the mural you have been painting on the walls of your heart. Instead, we will explore a different way of being, one that finds rest not in the completion of your image, but in the radical, quiet honesty of allowing the paint to settle, of putting down the brush, and of simply sitting in the empty, textured space of your own existence. Consider this paradox. The mind does not become peaceful because you have finished the work of perfecting your life. It becomes peaceful when you stop treating every internal movement, every worry, every doubt, every flicker of insecurity as a command to change your appearance. You have been laboring under the belief that if you could just get the composition right, if you could just find the perfect balance of calm and capability, you would finally be allowed to stop, to be still, to be truly at rest. But the peace you seek is not a destination at the end of a long, arduous process of self-improvement. It is the awareness that exists even when the mural is unfinished. Perhaps you have felt this before. The sudden, sharp pang of realizing that the image you have worked so hard to maintain for others is exhausting your spirit. You keep adding layers of color, trying to hide the cracks, trying to make the scene look stable and serene, unaware that the very act of painting over the cracks is what prevents you from seeing the beauty of the wall itself. You do not need to solve your whole life tonight. You do not need to decide who you will be tomorrow or how you will explain the messy parts of your story to the world. For this time, you are safe enough to soften. You are safe enough to let the brush slip from your hand. You are here, breathing in the quiet, and that is more than enough. The world will continue to turn without your constant intervention. The scenes you have been obsessively managing will continue to unfold according to their own rhythm, whether you are watching them or not. Right now, there is only this soft, dark room, the support beneath you, and the slow, steady movement of air in your lungs. You are not required to be a masterpiece. You are not required to be a display of resilience. You are simply a human being, tired from the journey, allowed to rest in the sanctuary of your own being. As we begin, notice the parts of your body that are still trying to hold a shape. Maybe your shoulders are pulled upward, as if bracing for a weight. Maybe your jaw is set or your brow is furrowed in deep unconscious focus. Take a slow, gentle breath, and as you release it, imagine those muscles simply letting go of their task. You are not abandoning your responsibility. You are merely acknowledging that for this time, you are off duty. You are not a painting being critiqued by the world. You are the wall, vast and solid, capable of holding whatever needs to be held, and empty enough to let everything else pass through like wind. In the moments that follow, we will walk toward a quiet courtyard, to a place where a muralist once learned that the beauty of a wall is not found in the image it displays, but in the silence it provides. We will see how he struggled to complete his work, how he grew weary of the constant retouching, and what happened when he finally chose to stop. But for now, there is nothing to do but listen, to allow your breath to guide you deeper into the quiet, and to realize that you are already safe, even in your incompleteness. You have arrived here, in this space of rest, and you have nothing left to prove to anyone, not even to yourself. You are allowed to be still. You are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to be simply yourself. In a region where the mountains climb so high they seem to brush the belly of the clouds, there once lived a man who served as the primary muralist for a secluded ancient temple. This temple was carved directly into the cliffside, its walls textured and raw for years. The monk in charge of the grounds had tasked this man with painting a mural that would capture the essence of a serene life. The mural was intended to be a gift for the pilgrims who climbed the treacherous path, a visual solace for their weary spirits. The muralist was a man of intense, quiet dedication. He approached his work with the fervor of someone trying to build a fortress against uncertainty. He spent his days high on a wooden scaffold, gripping a long, thin stick of charcoal, pressing it against the stone to outline figures of grace and stillness. Beside him, in a wooden bowl filled with water, lay a coarse, damp cloth. Whenever a line went slightly astray, or whenever the shifting light of the afternoon revealed a flaw in his composition, he would immediately take up that cloth and scrub the stone clean, determined to start the section over. He believed, with the quiet conviction of the exhausted, that if he could only perfect the mural, he would finally earn the stillness he painted. He worked in a rhythm of creation and erasure. He would sketch a delicate blossom or a tranquil face, then step back, squinting, judging the work with a sharp, internal eye. If it did not radiate the exact piece he felt he lacked, he would rub it away until the wall was bare once more. One autumn afternoon, as the wind began to whistle through the high, rocky crags, the elderly gatekeeper of the temple climbed the scaffold. The gatekeeper was a man who rarely spoke, but whose presence was as steady as the mountain itself. He watched for a long time as the muralist painstakingly erased a portion of the stone that looked, to the untrained eye, quite beautiful. The muralist's shoulders were hunched, his hands covered in the gray dust of charcoal and the damp grit of the stone. The gatekeeper reached into the folds of his simple robes and pulled out a small, polished wooden block. He did not say a word. He reached over and gently took the coarse, damp cloth from the muralist's hand. He set the cloth aside, resting it on the wooden planks of the scaffold, and then he laid the polished wooden block against the stone wall. The muralist looked at him, confused, his chest tight with the anxiety of a stalled process he wanted to finish. He wanted the wall to be complete, to be a testament to his effort, to be the thing that proved he had mastered his own inner agitation. He reached for his cloth, but the gatekeeper's hand was firm and light, preventing the movement. The gatekeeper turned to the wall. He took a heavy stick of dry, dark pigment and began to draw not a figure of a monk or a blooming tree, but a series of jagged, incomplete lines that followed the natural fissures already present in the temples. Stone, he did not attempt to smooth the wall. He did not try to hide the cracks. He simply traced the imperfections that the wind and the mountain had created over centuries. The muralist felt a strange, cold flutter in his heart. It felt as though his own carefully curated identity was being undone. The gatekeeper finished his quick, unpracticed sketches and then stepped back. He looked at the muralist and asked, not about the art, but about the worker, he asked. When you stand on this scaffold, are you painting to reveal the truth of the wall, or are you painting to hide the fact that you are afraid to be still? The muralist stood silent. The wind whipped at his robes, and for the first time in many years, he did not reach for the cloth to erase the imperfections of his own reaction. He looked at the jagged lines the gatekeeper had drawn, and he realized they were far more honest than the delicate, smoothed-over figures he had been struggling to perfect for weeks. He had been so focused on the image of peace that he had ignored the stone beneath it, the very foundation that had held the temple in place for 1,000 years. The gatekeeper placed the small wooden block in the muralist's palm. It was smooth, worn soft by decades of touch, he told him. The wall is not a canvas waiting for your approval. It is a surface that has already lived. If you try to erase every sign of life, every crack caused by the sun and the cold, you will never find what you are looking for. You are tired because you are trying to erase the very things that make you real. The gatekeeper walked down the scaffold, leaving the muralist alone in the golden, fading light. The muralist looked at the cloth in the bowl. It was damp and stained with the remnants of his failures. He thought about the hours he had spent scrubbing, the days he had lost to the belief that he could curate a perfect existence. He felt the weight in his shoulders, a weight that had been his constant companion, suddenly feel slightly lighter, as if the air around him had expanded. He did not pick up the cloth. He did not pick up the charcoal. He sat on the edge of the scaffold and looked out over the vast, deepening valley below. He watched the light move across the distant peaks, shifting from gold to violet to a deep, bruised blue. He noticed the way the valley held the shadow, not by fighting it, but by allowing it to fill the space. In that quiet, high-altitude air, he finally recognized the feeling he had been running from. It was not a lack of talent or a lack of discipline. It was the crushing, heavy labor of believing that his worth depended on the state of the wall. He realized that the mural was never meant to be finished. The mural was simply a way to participate in the life of the temple, a way to witness the stone. He looked at his hands, marked with the gray dust of the mountain. They were trembling, not from exhaustion, but from the sudden, terrifying, and beautiful recognition that he was allowed to stop. He was allowed to be unfinished. He was allowed to let the stone be exactly what it was, a piece of the mountain, flawed and enduring. The silence of the temple courtyard seemed to rise up to meet him. It was a thick, comforting silence, the kind that exists only when you finally stop trying to fill it with your own efforts. He took a long, slow breath, feeling the cool mountain air travel deep into his chest, past the tightness, past the worry, all the way to a place that had not been reached in years. In a moment, we will look at why this urge to finish, to perfect, and to curate creates the very suffering we are trying to escape. But for now, hold on to that image of the muralist sitting on the scaffold, the damp cloth lying untouched beside him. Notice how the pressure in your own chest changes when you imagine setting down your own tools, just for this night, just for this moment of rest. You are not the person who must finish the wall. You are the one who is allowed to sit and watch the light change across the stone. This story is not telling us that ambition is wrong, or that working to improve one's life is a mistake. It is not asking us to become cold, indifferent, or hollowed out. It is showing us something much quieter, and perhaps more vital for your peace of mind. The muralist's suffering did not begin because he painted, or because he cared about the quality of his work. His suffering began the moment he decided that the mural was an extension of his own worth, that if the mural were flawed, then he too was flawed. He was caught in the trap of believing that the stability of his life depended on the perfection of his performance. Buddhist wisdom suggests that we often treat our lives like that muralist treated his wall. We believe that if we can just smooth over every crack, if we can just scrub away the traces of our mistakes and hide the jagged edges of our human experience, we will finally be allowed to find rest. We think that peace is a reward for finishing the work of being correct or composed. But the lesson here is that you are not the mural, and you are certainly not the brush. You are the stone itself, the foundation that remains long after the paint has flaked away or been washed clean. Think about how often you have felt that same internal demand to erase a mistake before anyone else could see it. When you speak a word you regret, or when you find yourself anxious in a situation where you feel you should be strong, do you not reach for that mental cloth, desperate to rub away the experience so that the image of your life remains unblemished? This is what we call the second wound. The first wound is simply the life that happens, the setback, the embarrassment, the exhaustion, or the feeling of being unfinished. But the second wound is the judgment we layer on top of it. It is the part of the mind that says, I should not be this way, or I must fix this immediately so that no one notices. That secondary layer of judgment is what keeps you awake when the house is quiet. It is what makes your chest tight and your breath shallow. The muralist was not tired because the work was hard. He was tired because he was fighting the wall. He was fighting the very nature of stone, which is designed to hold texture, to hold history, and yes, to hold cracks. When you try to force your life to be a static, flawless image, you are essentially trying to stop the seasons from changing or the light from shifting across the landscape of your heart. True wisdom is realizing that the urgency you feel to solve your inner state is often just a form of fear wearing the mask of productivity. You fear that if you stop painting, if you stop retouching your presentation, you will be seen as broken or insufficient. But the gatekeeper's simple, worn wooden block was a reminder that the wall already possessed a beauty you could never create on your own. By tracing the natural fissures, he did not create a new reality, he simply acknowledged the one that was already there. He allowed the mountain to speak, rather than forcing his own design upon it. This is what it means to let go. A phrase often used but rarely felt in its fullness. Letting go does not mean you abandon what matters to you. It does not mean you stop caring about your growth or your responsibilities. It means you stop turning your care into a weapon against yourself. When you hold an object in your hand, if you grip it too tightly, your knuckles turn white, your muscles ache, and you lose the ability to feel the texture of what you are holding. You become so focused on the grip that you forget the object itself. In the same way, when you grip the idea of how you should be feeling, you lose the ability to actually feel your life. You are so busy bracing for the next potential flaw that you cannot inhabit the present moment. Mindfulness is not the act of forcing your mind to be empty, like a white blank wall. It is the ability to stand on the scaffold and watch your thoughts, watch your anxieties, and watch your fears, without feeling the need to scrub them away. It is the choice to look at the cracks in your own experience and say, yes, this is here, and it is part of the story. Compassion, in this context, is the strength required to meet your own suffering without adding a second wound. It is looking at your exhaustion, your frustration, or your fear, and instead of saying, I must fix this right now, you say, I see that you are tired. You have been holding the brush for a long time. It is all right to put it down. This is not resignation. It is a profound, grounded form of courage. It takes more strength to sit with the unfinished nature of your life than it does to keep running in circles, trying to perfect an image that will never, ever be truly complete. Notice how the tension shifts when you stop trying to curate your own existence. You are not a project. You are not a work in progress that needs to be rushed to completion. You are a process, fluid and moving, changing with the light, just as the mountain changes with the hours of the day. The suffering you have been carrying is heavy, yes, but how much of that weight is simply the effort of holding the brush? How much of it is the fear of being seen as you are, with all your beautiful human textures? You do not need to solve the mural tonight. The cracks will still be there tomorrow, and that is not a disaster, it is simply the nature of the stone. The things you feel are not signs that you have failed, they are signs that you are living, that you are affected by the world, and that you are human. When we allow ourselves to be unfinished, we finally make space for something else to enter, not more worry, not more planning, but a profound, resonant peace that comes from finally knowing you are safe, regardless of what the wall looks like. As you listen to these words, consider the possibility that your mind is not a nuisance to be silenced. It is a mirror reflecting the light, and sometimes that reflection is clear, and sometimes it is obscured by the dust of the day. You do not need to break the mirror to clear the view. You only need to stop trying to force it to show you something that isn't there. Tonight, we are going to explore how to sit in the presence of that mirror, how to notice the dust without calling it a failure, and how to find the quiet space between the thoughts. You are already in the right place to begin this, not because you have done anything to earn it, but because the space is already yours. It has always been yours. You are simply remembering how to dwell in it without the constant need to decorate the walls or perform for an audience that isn't even watching. There is a deep, ancient comfort in realizing you are allowed to be, just as you are in this moment of deep, gathering silence. If it feels right, allow your body to settle a little deeper into the space you occupy. You do not need to sit in any particular way. You do not need to hold your spine straight or your hands in a specific shape. The goal here is not to perform a meditation, but to simply offer yourself the same quiet, unpressured space that the muralist finally found on his scaffold. Take a breath, not because you have to deepen it, but simply to acknowledge the rhythm that has been carrying you all day. As you breathe in, feel the weight of the air. As you breathe out, imagine those small, tight hinges in your body, the jaw, the shoulders, the space between your eyebrows softening just a fraction, as if the tension were a layer of dust being blown away by a gentle breeze. Now, bring your attention to the mural you have been painting in your own mind today. Perhaps there is a thought that has been recurring, a scene you have been replaying, or a specific expectation you have been trying to meet. Do not judge this thought. Do not try to scrub it away with a mental cloth. Instead, simply name it. You might silently say to yourself, "This is the sound of the muralist trying to perfect the stone." Just notice it, as if you were standing on the ground below, looking up at the high, sun-drenched wall. If you find that the thought is persistent, imagine it as a single stroke of charcoal on that stone wall. It is there. It is a mark of your effort, a testament to how hard you have been working to curate a stable life. There is no need to erase it. There is no need to be ashamed of it. What happens if you simply look at that mark, acknowledge that it exists, and then consciously step back from the scaffold? Imagine the damp, coarse cloth sitting on the wooden plank beside you. You can see it there, dark and heavy with the weight of your past attempts to fix things. You might choose to leave it untouched. Instead, turn your gaze toward the natural texture of the stone itself, the parts of your life that you did not paint, the parts that were always there, solid and unmoving, beneath your efforts. Perhaps you notice a crack in the stone. In the past, you might have rushed to cover it with a new layer of pigment. Tonight, invite yourself to be curious about the crack instead. What is it like to look at the flaw without the urge to hide it? What is it like to let the stone be cracked and to realize that you are still supported by it? You do not need to solve the crack. You do not need to explain it to anyone. You are simply the witness, standing on the scaffold, watching the light move across the wall. If you feel your mind reaching for the cloth again, if you feel that familiar, urgent pull to fix your internal state, gently pause. Take another slow, quiet breath. You are not failing if you want to reach for the cloth. The habit of retouching the mural is deeply ingrained. Simply notice that the urge has arisen. You might say, "I am noticing the need to be perfect," then, with as much kindness as you would offer a tired friend. Visualize yourself setting your hands down, letting them rest in your lap, completely empty of tools. There is nothing to be painted tonight. The wall is allowed to be exactly as it is, unfinished, imperfect, and entirely real. Feel the texture of the stone beneath the imaginary images you have been projecting. It is cool, firm, and grounding. It does not ask you to be a masterpiece. It only asks you to exist. If you feel a sense of unease as you stop the work, stay with that sensation for a moment. Do not push it away. Let it be another mark on the wall. It is not an enemy to be defeated. It is just another part of the texture. If you can let it sit there without scrubbing it, you will find that the unease eventually changes its nature. It may grow quieter, or it may shift into something else, like a fading shadow at the end of the day. You have the choice in every moment to be either the muralist caught in the cycle of erasure, or the observer who knows the beauty of the wall. When you choose to be the observer, you stop adding the second wound of judgment. You stop blaming yourself for the fact that you are human, and that human lives are rarely finished, rarely perfectly smooth, and rarely static. If it feels right, place one hand over your heart. Feel the warmth of your palm against your chest. This is the only mural that truly matters tonight, the steady, rhythmic beat of a heart that has kept you going, even through the days when you felt you were failing. That heart does not need to be retouched. It does not need to be improved. It is already doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is sustaining your life, breath by breath, beat by beat. You might notice that as you stop reaching for the cloth, the room around you feels a little more spacious. The silence is no longer an empty void you have to fill with thoughts. It is a canvas that is already complete. You don't have to put anything on it. You don't have to leave any mark. You are simply resting in the presence of your own existence. If you find that the mind wanders back to the future, back to what you must do tomorrow or how you must appear to others, simply notice that too. That is just another flicker of light across the stone. You can watch it pass without becoming it. You are the stone, and the thoughts are just the light. The light changes, the light moves, but the stone remains. You are safe enough to soften. You are safe enough to let the images of who you think you should be simply fade into the darkness of the room. You have been holding the brush for so long, and your fingers are likely cramped and tired. But look, the brush is already gone. Your hand is empty. Your heart is quiet. There is no need to hurry. There is no need to arrive anywhere else. The temple courtyard is here. The high, rocky cliffs are outside, silent and enduring. The wind is moving through the trees, just as it has for centuries, without any input from you. You are part of that ancient, unhurried rhythm. You are part of the wall, the stone, and the light. As you continue to breathe, notice the sensation of letting go of the need to be correct. What a relief it is to simply be. What a weight is lifted when you realize that nobody is judging the mural, and there is no gatekeeper waiting to inspect your progress. There is only the long, quiet night, the gentle support of the bed beneath you, and the slow unfolding process of being alive. If you feel ready, allow yourself to sink a little deeper into the mattress. Let the bed hold the weight you have been carrying. You have been the one holding yourself up for so long. Let the earth hold you now. Let the architecture of the building hold you. You are part of the world, not separate from it. You are allowed to be small. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be, for this moment, entirely unfinished. The muralist eventually learned that the most beautiful part of his work was the moment he put down the cloth and walked away. He realized that the mural wasn't something he had to finish for the pilgrims. It was something he had to experience for himself. And tonight you are doing the same. You are moving from the role of the creator to the role of the witness. And in that transition you will find the rest you have been searching for all along. Stay here in this softness. There is no rush to conclude. No rush to change. If the thoughts return, just observe them as if they were distant clouds passing over the mountain peaks. They don't need you to fix them. They just need you to see them and let them pass. You are the sky, not the clouds. You are the wall, not the paint. And the night is a wide, dark, gentle space, waiting to hold whatever you are ready to put down. Years after the muralist first sat upon that scaffold and learned the grace of an empty hand, he found himself tasked with a different kind of labor. The temple's main hall had been damaged by a severe winter storm, and a section of the plaster wall had crumbled away, leaving a jagged, hollow space that looked out toward the dark, turbulent mountainside. The abbot, a woman of deep, silent presence who moved like a shadow through the halls, asked the muralist to repair it. He began the task with his old habits rising to the surface. He arrived with his tools, his mixtures, and his intense need to restore the wall to its previous, seamless state. He wanted the repair to be invisible. He wanted no pilgrim to know that the wall had ever been broken. He worked through the cold mornings, his breath hitching in his chest, his mind racing with plans on how to blend the new plaster into the old so perfectly that the seam would vanish. But the mountain was not cooperating. Every day, the dampness of the cold air seeped through the gap, causing his fresh plaster to crack and sag. He would arrive in the morning to find his work undone, the surface marred by ridges and fissures. Each time he saw this, he felt a familiar, sharp sting of frustration, a feeling that he was losing ground, that he was failing, that the mural of his own life was once again falling apart. He would grip his trowel so tightly that his knuckles ached, his mind swirling with thoughts of his own inadequacy. He began to stay late, long after the moon had risen, trying to fight the stone, trying to beat the cold, trying to enforce his will upon a situation that clearly had its own rhythm. One evening, as he stood before the hollowed wall, his back aching and his heart heavy with the familiar, suffocating pressure of perfectionism, the abbot walked into the hall. She did not look at the wall. She did not look at the mess of his tools or the failed patches of plaster. She simply carried a small, heavy iron kettle and placed it on the floor near his feet. She looked at him and said, "You are trying to patch the wall as if it were a wound that must be healed before anyone sees it. But the mountain is moving. The air is shifting. Are you repairing the wall, Or are you trying to repair your own sense of control? The muralist opened his mouth to explain the technical difficulties, the humidity, the inconsistency of the materials, but he stopped. He looked at his hands, which were raw and chapped, and he realized that the abbot was right. His stress was not coming from the wall. It was coming from his belief that if the wall wasn't perfect, he was somehow lacking. He had turned the repair into a performance of his own capability. The abbot pointed to the large, jagged hole in the wall. The cold is entering because the wall is open, but the cold is also showing us something about the structure of the temple that we couldn't see before. Why are you so afraid of the gap? The muralist sat down on the cold floor, the iron kettle beside him. He felt a deep, weary wave of realization. He had been so focused on hiding the breakage that he had ignored the fact that the breakage had changed the nature of the hall. It had invited the mountain in. Instead of reaching for his trowel, he simply sat there, breathing in the smell of the damp, cold earth and the crisp, thin air of the peaks. He chose, for the first time in his life, to stop fighting the crack. He didn't abandon the repair, but he abandoned the fight. He decided that he would work with the materials he had in the conditions that existed, without demanding that the result be an illusion of perfection. The next morning, he did not rush. He did not scrub away the previous day's work. Instead, he observed where the plaster had settled and where it had cracked. He saw that the cracks followed the natural stress points of the stone. He stopped trying to force the plaster into a flat, smooth sheet. He began to press the material into the fissures, not to hide them, but to reinforce them. He worked with the wall, not against it. As he worked, his mind remained remarkably quiet. When a thought arose, this won't be good enough, people will see the repair. I am falling behind. He did not grab his trowel to fix it, nor did he grab his cloth to erase it. He noticed the thought, felt the slight tightening in his chest, and then took a breath. He returned to the texture of the plaster, the coolness of the trowel, the sound of the wind outside. He treated the worry as just another movement of the air, not a truth he had to obey. Days passed. The repair was not invisible. Anyone walking into the hall could see that the wall had been mended. There were textures, there were lines, there were subtle differences in the color of the plaster. But the wall felt solid. It held its ground. The muralist, too, felt different. He was tired at the end of the day, but it was a natural physical exhaustion, not the brittle, hollow fatigue of an anxious mind. He no longer felt the need to apologize for the work or to hide the history of the wall. He realized that he had spent his life thinking that peace was a state where nothing was broken. He now saw that peace was the state of being okay with the fact that things break, that things change, and that the beauty of life is found in the mending, not in the denial of the crack. He hadn't become a master of the wall, he had simply become a friend to it. The abbot returned on a late, quiet afternoon. She ran her hand over the repaired section. She felt the texture, the slight unevenness, the honesty of the work. She did not praise him, nor did she critique him. She simply nodded, as if acknowledging that a great weight had finally been set down. The muralist looked at his hands. They were stained with the dust of the work, but he no longer felt the urge to wash them frantically to appear clean. He felt a strange new freedom in being seen, in being marked by his labor, in being someone who had walked through the fire of his own expectations and come out on the other side. He realized then that the perfection he had chased was a ghost. It was a projection of his own fear. By letting go of the need for the wall to be a reflection of his own worth, he had finally allowed himself to be present. The muralist was no longer trying to paint a life, he was finally living one. As you sit here in the quiet of your own room, consider how often you have tried to patch the walls of your own life with the plaster of appearances. How often have you feared the cold air of reality, the cracks that appear when the seasons change, or the gaps that open up when things don't go as planned? You have been trying to hide the broken parts, not realizing that those very parts are the places where you are most human, most grounded, and most capable of finding real peace. Tonight, you do not need to be the muralist who fights the cold. You can be the one who sits on the floor, who acknowledges the gap, and who works with the truth of the materials at hand. You are allowed to be imperfect. You are allowed to let the repairs be visible. You are allowed to be a person who has been weathered, mended, and changed, and who is still, miraculously, standing. The silence that now fills the temple hall is not empty. It is heavy with the relief of someone who has stopped running. You can feel that same silence here, beneath the sheets, beneath the noise of the day, beneath the thoughts that try to tell you that you are not enough. You are here. You are exactly as you are, and that is enough. We will soon explore how this shift in perspective, this moving away from the need for perfection, changes your relationship with the very things that cause you anxiety in your daily life. But for now, just rest in the image of the muralist, no longer fighting the wall, no longer holding his breath, just working with what is real. Let that image sink into your bones. Let it soften the parts of you that have been trying to hold a perfect shape. You are safe enough to be real. You are safe enough to stop. The muralist's struggle with the crumbling wall reflects a deep, silent mechanism that operates within your own mind. The belief that if you could only exert enough control, you could insulate yourself from the uncertainty of being human. When you feel a sense of internal fragmentation or anxiety, you often interpret it as a structural failure. You assume that if you were truly wise, truly disciplined, or truly grounded, you would not be experiencing this turbulence. This belief leads to the second wound, the judgment you add to your own experience. The first wound is the inherent difficulty of life, the losses, the pressures, the exhaustion, and the unavoidable reality that nothing remains in a fixed state. The second wound is the voice that tells you this suffering is a personal defect, a sign that you have neglected your duty to maintain a perfect, stable mural. This second wound is what keeps the mind locked in a cycle of resistance. Think of it as a form of self-judgment that masquerades as protection. Your mind believes that by highlighting your flaws, by reminding you of what you have failed to fix, or how you have failed to appear, it is keeping you vigilant. It tells you that if you can just rehearse the future, or replay the past with a different outcome, you might finally find the safety you crave. But this constant, frantic mental labor is not protection, it is exhaustion. It is the act of trying to plaster a wall that is currently shifting with the mountain, a task that can never lead to a finished surface because the foundation is alive. We often turn our pain into an identity because it feels more solid than the fluid, changing nature of our true selves. If I tell myself that I am an anxious person or a failed creator, or a burden, I have created a stable, albeit painful story. I have built a mural that I can recognize. Even if it is a mural of shadows, it feels safer to be a person who is struggling than to be a person who is simply present in a world that is inherently unpredictable. When you turn your pain into your identity, you create a cage that you then have to defend, maintain, and paint over every single day. This is the ultimate form of attachment, the attachment to your own narrative of inadequacy. Buddhist wisdom asks us to notice this process without turning the noticing into yet another task to be completed. When you see your mind replaying a mistake or anticipating a catastrophe, you do not need to attack the mind. You do not need to scold yourself for having these thoughts. That would only be adding a third wound to the first two. Instead, you can begin to see these patterns as mere weather. Just as the storm that damaged the temple hall was not an attack on the muralist, your anxieties and your patterns of over-control are not attacks on you. They are the conditions of the current season. Peace is not the state where the weather stops changing. It is not a magical plateau where you are finally exempt from challenge, doubt, or discomfort. If you wait for your life to become a perfectly smooth, uncracked wall before you allow yourself to find peace, you will wait until your final breath. Peace is the relationship you build with the difficulty itself. It is the act of stepping back from the scaffold of your own self-judgment and saying, yes, there is a crack here. Yes, the air is cold. Yes, this is difficult. Consider how much of your life is consumed by the need for external approval, the desire to have your mural validated by others so that you can feel secure in your own skin. This is the search for a mirror that can confirm your existence. But even if you were surrounded by the applause of the world, your internal sense of stability would remain fragile because it is tied to an image. The moment the light changes, or the moment someone stops looking, the mural seems to fade, and the panic returns. True stability is found only when you stop looking for your reflection in the eyes of others and begin to rest in the awareness that is observing the wall. Fear of uncertainty is the primary driver of this performative existence. You want to know that you are safe, that you are successful, and that you will not be caught off guard. You want the future to be a fixed, predictable image. But life is an unfolding, not a display. The very things you fear, the moments of vulnerability, the times when you feel unfinished, the periods of confusion, are the times when you are most closely aligned with the truth of the world. By resisting these moments, you block the very experience that would show you that you are fundamentally safe, regardless of whether you are succeeding or failing by any conventional metric. You have been conditioned to believe that you are the painter, solely responsible for the outcome of your life. But you are also the stone. You are the deep, ancient, and enduring reality that exists beneath all the efforts, all the roles, and all the projections. When you stop fighting the reality of your current state, you do not disappear, you actually become more real. You become a person who can hold the weight of their own experience without collapsing under the pressure of trying to hide it. This is the shift from the curator of a life to the witness of a life. The curator is always stressed, always looking for the next patch, always afraid of the next crack. The witness is curious, steady, and kind. The witness sees the crack and understands it as a part of the mountain. The witness sees the anxiety and understands it as a part of the weather. By becoming the witness, you do not stop experiencing difficulty, but you stop being overwhelmed by it. You stop identifying with the plaster and start grounding yourself in the stone. You have spent years, perhaps, refining your performance, making the mural look seamless, and carrying the burden of that image. It is perfectly understandable that you are tired. It is deeply human that you want to be done with the struggle. But the exhaustion you feel is the signal that you are finished with the performance, not that you are finished with the life. It is time to step off the scaffold. It is time to let the plaster settle, to leave the seams visible, and to sit in the hall of your own heart with nothing left to hide. Everything you feel right now, the heaviness, the fear of the future, the fatigue, is a natural response to being alive. It is not evidence of a flaw. It is evidence that you are participating in the process of existence. When you can meet these feelings with the same patient, quiet observation that the muralist finally brought to the broken wall, you will find that the suffering loses its grip. You are not the work you are doing. You are not the image you are presenting. You are the space in which the work and the life are happening, and that space is vast, quiet, and already complete. Tonight, you can stop the rehearsal. You can let the scene be whatever it is. Whether your mind feels like a calm hall or a place still recovering from a storm, the space itself remains unchanged. You are safe enough to stop, to be exactly as you are, and to trust that you do not need to finish anything to be worthy of the rest you are about to receive. The work of the day is done, the paint is dry, and the mountain, the solid, unmoving reality of who you are, is waiting, in the quiet, for you to finally lean against it and close your eyes. You might wonder how this wisdom, born on a mountain scaffold, can survive the friction of your everyday life. It is easy to find clarity in the quiet of the night, but the real practice begins tomorrow, in the sudden interruptions and the small, familiar pressures that make you feel as though you must be something other than you are. The wisdom of the unfinished mural is not meant to be kept in a temple. It is meant to walk with you through the grocery store, into the office, and into the spaces where you feel most vulnerable. Consider those moments when you are lying awake at night, your phone glowing in the dark, refreshing a feed or waiting for a message that you hope will provide some sense of certainty. In those moments, you are essentially back on the scaffold, desperately trying to touch up the mural of your life so that it looks complete, liked, or successful. You are not waiting for a text. You are waiting for a sign that your life is acceptable as it is. But the anxiety you feel while waiting is just the echo of the brush against the stone. It is the sound of you trying to manage the light, trying to force the scene to be still. Next time you find yourself gripped by that need to check and recheck, pause for one heartbeat. Notice the tension in your hands as you hold the device. You are not required to put the phone away forever, but you are invited to recognize that you are currently painting. Simply naming the act, "I am currently trying to curate my life to feel safe," is the first, most powerful step toward putting down the brush. Or think about those times in your day when you are smiling and nodding at someone. Even though inside you feel exhausted, fragmented, or heavy, you feel as though you are obligated to maintain the image of the stable person. You fear that if you show the slightest crack, the entire structure will collapse, and others will see you as you fear you are unfinished, unsure, or behind. But consider the freedom of acknowledging, just to yourself, that you are currently a work in progress. When you stop pretending, you do not lose your integrity, you gain a profound, quiet strength. You can care deeply about the people in your life without having to grip the image of yourself so tightly. You can listen, you can respond, and you can participate without the constant, draining labor of maintaining a facade. When you make a mistake, and you will, because you are human, notice if your first instinct is to immediately reach for the cloth of self-judgment. We are taught that shame is a useful tool, that if we punish ourselves enough, we will become better. But shame is not a gardener, it is a drought. It does not help you grow. It just keeps you trapped in the same loop of replaying what you should have done differently. The next time a mistake triggers that spiral of self-reproach, remember the muralist. Remind yourself, this is not a failure, this is simply a crack in the stone. You do not need to scrub it away. You do not need to hide it. You only need to see it, accept that it exists, and continue with the work of living. The pressure to be ahead in life is perhaps the most persistent illusion of all. We compare our internal sense of confusion to the external display of someone else's life, and we conclude that we are failing. But you are not behind. You are not on a track that requires you to reach a destination by a certain hour. You are a mountain, and the mountain does not apologize for its shape, its height, or the path of the streams that run down its sides. Every season has its purpose. Your current season of feeling heavy, or uncertain, or simply tired is not an interruption of your life, it is a vital part of the landscape. To fight it is to fight the nature of your own existence. You may also find yourself trying to control the people around you, your partner, your children, your colleagues, because you fear that if they do not behave in a predictable way, the mural of your life will be ruined. This is a common, understandable response to the fear of uncertainty, but you are not the director of their lives. You are not even the director of your own life in the way you imagine. You are a participant, a witness, a presence. When you stop trying to manage the outcome of every interaction, you open the door to genuine connection. You allow the other person to be a mystery, and you allow yourself to be a person who can hold that mystery without needing to solve it, even in the smallest actions. Like the moment before you answer an email or respond to a difficult question, there is an opening for this wisdom. Most of our suffering comes from the impulsive, automatic way we react to the world, based on the fear that if we are not quick or perfect or correct, we will be vulnerable. Taking a single conscious breath before you react is a form of profound discipline. It is a way of stepping off the scaffold. That one breath creates a space where you can choose rather than just repeat the old, tired patterns. It is the difference between being a slave to the need to be perfect and being a person who is intentionally participating in their own life. You do not need to earn your rest by being perfect, and you do not need to prove your worth by finishing the mural. The exhaustion you feel is the result of trying to solve your entire life in one go. Trying to paint a masterpiece in the middle of a storm. You are permitted to be exactly as you are tonight. You are allowed to leave the tasks unfinished, the worries unresolved, and the cracks visible. You are not a project that needs a deadline. You are a human being who has been working very hard, and you have every right to lean back, to look at the sky, and to finally truly let go. The modern world asks you to be a permanent finished image, but the heart asks for nothing more than the permission to be soft. You can be disciplined in your work. You can be caring toward others, and you can be mindful of your own growth, all without having to hold your breath to keep the mural intact. You are safe enough to stop. You are safe enough to be seen with your textures, your history, and your gaps. This is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of a life where you are finally present for the beauty that was there all along, underneath all the paint, in the cool, solid, and enduring stone of your own being. You are already exactly where you need to be, and you have nothing left to prove to anyone. least of all to the version of yourself that thought it had to be a masterpiece to deserve peace. The high mountain air that once felt sharp and demanding has softened, cooling into the velvet dark of a night that asks nothing of you. In the temple hall, the wall you were so desperate to perfect now rests in the dim moonlight. The cracks you once feared are no longer jagged defects. They are simply the honest topography of a structure that has weathered the seasons. You can feel the coolness of the stone, the stillness of the mountain, and the weight of your own body settling against the earth, supported by a foundation that was always there, long before you picked up your first brush. Notice how the urge to retouch the mural has finally quieted. The charcoal stick is long forgotten, the damp cloth has dried, and the scaffold has been dismantled by the rhythm of the night. You are no longer the painter anxious for approval, you are the wall itself, vast and capable of holding the silence. Feel the weight of your limbs as they become heavy, sinking into the soft mattress like a stone, settling into the silt of a deep riverbed. There is no more need to curate, no more need to smooth the surface, and no more need to stand guard over the image of who you think you should be. Your breath is moving like the night wind through the temple courtyard, not rushing to get anywhere, not trying to change the temperature of the air, just flowing in and out in an ancient, unhurried cycle. With each exhale, imagine the remaining tension in your mind, that last stubborn flicker of wanting to solve, wanting to fix, wanting to be ahead, simply dissolving into the shadows of the room. It is fading, turning into the dark, harmless space where dreams begin. You are not losing yourself in this darkness, you are finding the part of you that does not need to be painted to be real. The muralist finally found his rest not when he finished the painting, but when he understood that the painting was secondary to the stillness of the hall. Tonight, you are invited to adopt that same quiet posture. Let your brow be smooth, completely unburdened by the thoughts that were trying to map out tomorrow's performance. Let your jaw unhinge, releasing the pressure of all the words you felt you had to hold back or polish. You are safe enough to let the expression on your face be entirely blank, entirely at rest, a mirror reflecting only the peaceful, deep dark of the room. If thoughts arise, and they may, like distant memories of the day, do not chase them. Let them float past like mist trailing over the crags of the mountain, distant and detached from the solid, unmoving ground you are resting upon. They do not require your obedience. They do not require your analysis. They are merely passing weather, and the hall of your heart is large enough to host the clouds without needing to become them. You are the hall. You are the space. You are the deep, resonant silence that exists before a single brushstroke is ever laid upon the stone. The labor you performed today, the effort you put into showing up, the way you carried yourself, it was enough, more than enough. But that was a work of the day, and the sun has long since retreated, taking with it the need for presentation. Now belongs to the moon, the shadow, and the restoration of your own quiet spirit. There is a deep, ancient comfort in realizing that you do not have to hold the ceiling up, that you do not have to keep the mural intact, that the world will continue to spin, and the temple will continue to stand, without your constant, anxious attention. Let your hands lie open, fingers curled softly, palms resting against the cool sheets. They have worked hard. They have held the brush and the cloth, the phone and the pen, the weight of 1,000 small obligations. Let them be empty now. Let them be heavy with the peace of doing absolutely nothing. The silence in your room is not an absence of life, it is the presence of your own true nature, which does not need to be busy to be valid. You are arriving, finally, at the threshold of the deep, dreamless quiet, where the distinction between the painter and the wall eventually vanishes entirely. Everything that felt sharp earlier in the evening is rounding out, softening, merging with the shadows. The anxieties that seemed so solid are losing their definition, becoming like the textures of the stone wall in the moonlight, vague, peaceful, and entirely indifferent to your judgment. You are drifting toward a place where the concept of unfinished no longer has any meaning, because you are no longer trying to reach a goal. You are simply resting in the present, a presence as steady and unremarkable as the foundation of an ancient, mountain-carved temple. Breathe, just breathe. Feel the weight of your bones pressing into the mattress. Feel the floor beneath the bed. Feel the earth beneath the floor. all of it holding you with a strength that does not require you to hold yourself together. You are held. You are grounded. You are finished with the performance of being. And you are finally beginning the act of being. The night is a wide, dark, gentle ocean, and you are allowing yourself to float, to let go of the oars, to let the current carry you into the deepest, softest part of the stillness. What if the rest you have been searching for was never a prize to be won, but the simple, quiet space that remained once you finally stopped asking to be anyone other than who you are?